I was looking at this slide earlier. I feel it kind of gives the game away. I mean, everyone knows what the answer to this is really going to be, but we'll crack on through it anyway and see what happens. I hate the term stakeholder management. I think I'm uniquely placed to hate it because I used to be a stakeholder, and the concept that anyone could manage me, go way out of it. But at the same time, I think that whole notion of people and being able to speak to them, be able to have them core to the product you're trying to ship and stitched in throughout the whole journey is absolutely vital to what we have to do as product people. And I think when that's reduced down to this, get this person from A to B, it's just nonsense to me. Like that, all that reminds me of is I grew up on a farm in southeast Ireland, and when we had to get something from A to B, it would be calves from one shed to another. We would spread out some straw so that it's all comfortable for them, and we'd let them out on the road, and they would just charge for you because they don't know where they're going or where they're coming from nearly, and they just are motivated by kind of fear and uncertainty. And when it gets to the point where those animals are even older, and then they're cows, if you're still taking those cows from A to B, they're plodding along, they know kind of exactly where they're going, they've been through it 100 times. And as horrible as an analogy that might be, I think if you think about having stakeholders go from A to B, it's either reduced then down to them operating out of fear and uncertainty and kind of scattering to the winds, or having no real input in what you're trying to get across. So they just kind of move along with whatever you say and don't really challenge anything that's going on. And I think that's the core problem. It's too alienated, too isolated when you just think about that kind of global term, and it needs to be more integrated in. So what I wanted to do with my time here today is to take you through, I guess, 3 fairly personal stories to me from my time at the Telegraph, as to where I learned some fairly key things about stakeholder management. My slides are basically just screenshots from Netflix and Amazon, so bear with that. But I think the first one is, I'm sure no one here has ever backed themselves into a corner where they've overcommitted to something or kind of promised too many features that they were then struggling to deliver on time. But if you ever have, this might resonate a little bit with you. There are a couple of developers in the Telegraph who live outside of the core development teams, who I have very little kind of input to. They operate for their kind of own means. I was trying to think of a way to describe them, and they remind me a bit of the legendary bird Pokemon. They're kind of mystical and fearsome at the same time. And it got to the point where I'd backed myself into a corner with a project, and I needed to get this one guy's help. And for all intents and purposes, he was like Moltres. He was like terrifying. And I had zero relationship with this guy. And yet I knew that to get this feature delivered on time, I was going to have to rock up to this dude and be like, you need to help me ASAP. And how could that really pull together? I had kind of scrambled around looking for advice, looking for some kind of help as to how do I deal with this dude? And all I got was, oh, no, you're in trouble. Like, this guy is next level. You're not going to get anything done. So I was like, oh my God, can you just give me any bit of advice at all? Like, I really need to get this sorted. So they gave me all this stream of advice, like, oh, get him 12 crosstown donuts, make sure they're chocolate truffle only, or else he'll just kick you out. Or you need to have 2 of his team vouch for you before you can even send him an email. It's like, what am I supposed to do here? So at the end of it all, I just went with my gut. I just picked up my sparkly coated laptop and skipped over. And as I could see him in the distance, I kind of noticed this furrowed expression, face down, a bit pained, headphones on. And I was like, oh, no, maybe I should leave him be for a second. But as I was turning around, our eyes caught, and he gave me that very sad kind of, okay, come speak to me then. I know what you're after. So I tiptoed over anyway and kind of was like, oh, look, I'm so sorry to have to. And then I just noticed that what he was working on was a kind of in the last throes of an eBay bid for an Aphex Twin record. I was like, this is fine. So I just started chatting to him about music for about 25 minutes. I'd almost forgotten why I'd went over there in the first place, to which I was like, oh, I need your help to sort out this feature for me. He was like, oh, fine, yeah, done. I was like, oh, amazing. I had spent far more time freaking out about how to talk to this person than just going and using, I guess, my own wit, my own voice to have some kind of relationship with this guy. And I nearly blew it all. I nearly walked away from just going over to his desk. And I think one of the main tenets that taught me was that you need to find your own voice when you're dealing with people and stakeholders. If you're going from other people's advice, it's fine if you're taking it as kind of a holistic message for how generally to approach someone. You know, if they're generally irritable, well, maybe you just keep that in mind, but don't shy away from using your own personality and your own experience to talk to them. That was the first thing I learned. So one of the other things, I'm like a serial potterer, I'd say, which will undoubtedly piss some people off here, but I've really lived up to Miss McCarthy's third-class parent-teacher meeting report, where she said that I was distracting others. Because if I have any kind of free time at all, I will just wander around, kind of spot anyone I want to talk to, and I will show up and sit down beside them and chat away. And I think, one, that's probably me being a bit of a miscreant with time, but the other point is that I have found some of the kind of key parts of relationships with people throughout just doing that, just showing up and chatting to them with no real agenda. And I've also gathered some of the most important requirements from like a product stakeholder relationship, just from that whole process. One of the things, I saw my old boss. She was sat down kind of not where she usually would be sitting. And me, as always, just kind of like pottering around, was like, oh, hey, how are you getting on? Sat down beside her, and I instantly knew that it was probably an area that I shouldn't be in. Her browser window was just full of tabs, of spreadsheets, kind of, and she seemed incredibly stressed out. And I was like, oh my God, what's wrong? And we just spoke for a bit about general work stuff. And I was like, is there anything I can do to help? To which she said, oh, you can like put an ad on every page of the website. Now, I think one of the main problems from just ambling around to people is that you will get requests. And generally the response from a product manager to a stakeholder who just straight up asks you for a fully solutionized feature is like, great, but it's not part of the roadmap. Or we'll put it in the backlog. Or we'll have a chat about this at another stage. All those kind of deferring tactics. And that's what I'd generally been doing. But this was kind of a bit different. I could see this was like a real pain point. So I just asked her, I was like, that's great. We could put another ad on every page of the website, but we're legitimately not going to do that. But why really are you asking? And she said that, we're not seeing the same amount of ad yield on mobile as we are on desktop. And I was like, well, that's a bit strange because it's a responsive website, the same features that are on desktop should shift to mobile. And we kind of got into it. And the true nature of what was being asked was revealed. And at that time, I felt like something straight out of a Raymond Chandler novel, like this grizzled PI who had suddenly knew too much from asking too many questions. And it turned out that we had to re-architect our entire advertising stack and rebuild a lot of the advertising units that we put on the website. This came as a slight surprise for a Tuesday afternoon when I was just lazing around asking people what they were doing for their Wednesdays. So we then held a bit of a state of the nation. We gathered together all the other stakeholders across the building, sat them in a room and had a bit of a mini UN where we were incredibly transparent about how this revealed itself, the impact it was going to have on us for the rest of the year, how it was going to impact the roadmap and impact some of the stuff that they had been working on and they had been expecting. And you have some disgruntled people at that stage, make no bones about it. But as long as you can be transparent in that situation, people were fairly pragmatic about it all. And we had to just interrupt the roadmap and slot this huge piece of work in. Which in the end, I think was the right idea. I still don't know. How will you ever know? But we got it done. Everything was generally fine. But that wouldn't have come from anything other than me asking why at that stage. I know it's a fairly well-respected tenet of product management is that you do the 5 whys, but when you're just rolling around and you're getting kind of these errant requests from everywhere, it's harder to do. Between you and me, I was at an interview before, and the interviewer asked me what makes a good product manager. And I went into some big old spiel about how it needs to be collaborative and need to be visionary and need to, have this great relationship between design, UX, development, everything. And they were kind of like, no, a good product manager says no. I was like, hang on. I fundamentally disagree with that. I think that's a ridiculous statement, to be honest. I think it's fine to be skeptical when someone asks you face value as to what they exactly want without any kind of real rigor into what they're asking. But you need to be able to question why. Why are you actually asking me that? So I think a good product manager says no, but then asks why. That was the second thing I learned. The third thing, let's say everything goes well. You have a real close relationship with all your stakeholders. The whole roadmap is going great. Everything's fine. What happens when things start to fall apart? There was a situation, I was in a meeting with some fairly heavy hitters from the exec team. And it was myself and a stakeholder colleague of mine. We were presenting back this kind of visionary plan for how we were going to change one of the features on the website. And I was sat there, I'd done my bit, I'd delivered my message, and I was kind of lounging back and letting them deliver theirs. And it probably wasn't great because I was starting to zone out because I'd heard it all before. We'd gotten over the real hump of the meeting. Everything was fine. Until I overheard, well, Ian ignores my request for that. If I had had coffee, I would have spat it out everywhere. I was shocked. I was like, well, excuse me, but I believe we had a chat about this yesterday. It was like, well, we might have had a chat about it, but I think you ignored my requests. We ended up escalating this Olympics of passive aggression for about 15 minutes until, to my horror, I heard the door behind me creak closed. And I'd realized that people were starting to leave the meeting. People that we had come there to impress were so fed up of our kind of childish bickering that they were just like, oh, I've had enough. The chair of the meeting fairly abruptly closed it down, and she just said, look, get out, come back to us with your house in order. The embarrassment and the shame at that stage, having thought everything was going fine and have that rug stripped out from under you, was horrible. So I just left. I went left. The other stakeholder went right. That was it. It was just done. I remember sitting at my desk. I could feel how hot my ears were and my cheeks. I could feel the blood pumping around my face. And all I was doing was staring at the cursor in Gmail as it blinked incessantly. And all I could think about was, what was he thinking? And then I don't know what it was, but I just thought, well, what was he thinking? This seems crazy. Everything was going fine. Like, why, if we have disagreements, we can take it outside of that meeting and kind of sort it out later on. Was he stressed? Did I come across as negative? Did I say something that might have undermined him earlier on? What actually was going on that provoked such a strange reaction and descended into that kind of messy chaos? This is 4:30 on a Friday. All I can think about doing is going home and playing PlayStation, which is not that dissimilar to what I'm thinking about right now. But I realized in this kind of sinking feeling in my stomach that if I don't talk to this guy, this relationship that we have poured hours into building up, this whole feature that we've just pitched, is all dust unless we can sort out our trivial differences. So once again, I got up and I walked over to their desk and stood beside this guy, and he could barely look at me. He was so angry at me. I was raging at him. I kind of muttered, we need to have a chat. And in silence, we walked around the corner to this kind of meeting area, which we very promptly started to have it out. And that actually ended up reinforcing a relationship. I kind of got to know what was going on in his mind a bit more. He understood where I was coming from. And though we kind of stepped on each other's toes, that was the last time that happened. I can't describe to you. I think I've done a poor job of explaining how awkward that was and how weird it was to actually have that conversation. But like I say, if we hadn't have had it, it would have been toast. So I think that's my final lesson, is that you need to do the awkward thing. At the end of the day, I think we build products for people. If we don't, like, what's the point, really and truly? But at the same time, we need to stitch those products through with the kind of emotions and the experiences and the intelligence and the insight from our stakeholders. Because if you miss out on that, you miss out on like truly useful products. So I think we need to build products for people, but we need to build them with people. And that is my very eloquent way of finishing. Thank you very much for listening.